Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It's Season 3, Episode 30. The Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the final preseason game, a wrap-up as they do every year against the Carolina Panthers. Before we get into tomorrow's game, let's talk about something that we're going to be doing this year, just a fun way to get fans with the podcast involved. Similar to how we did last year for the Funko Pop, we are going to be doing a fantasy football league, in part because I've never done this before, and I've done fantasy football before, but I've never done an IDP league, and IDP is individual defensive players, so I'm used to drafting, regular team defenses, but for this league, the goal will be drafting individual players on defense to kind of keep a closer eye on players on that side of the ball as well. So it's going to be a 10-team league. Austin and I have teams, so we are going to have 8 open spots for other people to compete with us and just have a good time. And the winner, and if the two of us win, we won't accept the gift since we're the creators and founders of this podcast. The gift is meant for the fans. So whoever were to finish in second would receive, we were hoping, would be a mystery box from TSC. What's it called, Austin?
It's just called a mystery box from TSC Shop. Well, essentially what we were looking for was they were doing 8x10 autographs, and they were random, and it would just be a signed random Steelers player from the past or present, and it would be random, and whoever won it. And also, if it ends up me and John in the final, it would go to third place.
Yeah, don't worry. We're not gonna take the prize for ourselves. Don't worry about that. We just want to be in the league for fun, and we want to interact with some of our audience a bit too. So, feel free to join. The name of the league is STS Football 2018, and the password is Super Bowl. No spaces, and the first letter in the S of super is capitalized, and the first letter of B for bowl is also capitalized. So that's Super Bowl, no spaces, capital S and B. So we hope you get a chance to join, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. We're still in the process of altering the settings and getting everything all set. The draft is scheduled right now for Monday, but we might change that. We are going to try to have it done, obviously, before next Thursday. So if we could get people to join as quickly as possible, we would really appreciate it. And we wish you all the best of luck for whoever wants to join. So thank you very much for that announcement that we wanted to make. And we hope you are interested in joining for perhaps one of these mystery boxes from TSC Sports. So thank you. So on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This upcoming week, there's usually not a whole lot going on in the game, so instead we're going to talk about what's been going on around the locker room first. First is Vance McDonald, the Steelers' often injured tight end. His base salary and contract got restructured the other day, changing his base salary for this season. It got turned into a signing bonus, so the Steelers are going to save about $2 million this year. Normally this is something you see in the off season, but seeing it at this late, this close to the season starting, I'll be honest with you, Austin, this looks kind of like the Steelers could be making room to add another player. Is that what it looks like to you?
Yeah, they needed more money to work with, whether they got someone now or needed someone later in the season. Personally, I think this means they're pursuing someone now, but it could just be working ahead of the game, because obviously they did take a tiny bit of salary cap hit by trading for Ryan Switzer and not dumping off any salary in that trade. But he's still in a rookie deal, so it wasn't like anything killer. But I do think that they're in pursuit of someone and they're trying to clear space for when the trade happens. What do you think?
I'm in complete agreement, and I'll say that despite the fact that the inside linebacker positions where we've kind of been expecting someone is going to be added, I don't think that this is where the Steelers would be adding someone else. I think it's going to be actually somewhere on offense, and I'll get to that a little more later. But I don't think they're going to be adding anyone of significance. This will be kind of an under-the-radar kind of guy. It's not like Joe Hayden from last year. All right, next bit of news. Everyone's been wondering when Le'Veon Bell is going to be reporting back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. There was suspicion that he would be returning on Labor Day because that's when he returned last season. And that was actually the report, is that he was going to be back with the team on Labor Day. And that's not too surprising. But what was surprising was a tweet from Bell himself where he seemed to be calling that report itself fake news. Is there any chance that Bell actually doesn't come back then, or he just ends up missing a game or so? James Harrison was just recently on Fox Sports talking about how that might be in his best interest to miss some games. If he does miss games, first of all, do you think he's going to or not? And second of all, what would the impact be on Bell, the Steelers, and the fans if he does miss games?
I don't expect him to break his or his agent's word and miss regular season games. They said right at the beginning that they were not planning on missing any regular season games. So he more than likely is just coming later than that, like Tuesday or Wednesday. It was just like a slightly off on when he was actually going to report. But if he doesn't show up and he doesn't play for a game, oh boy, is that going to be interesting. I'm going to be starting to hop. I'm going to hop on the Le'Veon Bell hate train. I'm not on the Le'Veon Bell hate train, but if he misses any games, I'm going to be livid. I'm going to be pissed off. I'm going to want him out of Pittsburgh as soon as the season ends. I'll buy his plane ticket when he's going to be a rich man and get a $16.5 million deal or whatever he's going to get when he leaves. If that happens, because he's not a Pittsburgh Steeler in my eyes. If that's what happens. But what do you think?
I'm right there with you. I think if he ends up missing games, obviously any fan support he has left would be gone. The fans would completely turn on him. And more importantly, I think the locker room would start to turn on him. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think the locker room would start to turn on him.
I wonder if at that point, if that were to happen, let's entertain a thought. We had talked about the Steelers rescinding the tag in the past. Not that we ever thought they were going to do it, but if that happened, they might just consider it, wouldn't you think?
But isn't the last day you could rescind the tag like the day before the season starts? I guess if he doesn't show up that day, you could just not to pull it. But it's like they don't really have time to say, okay, he's not going to show up for the game. So we can do that. I would heavily consider having $14.5 million in cap space going into the season might be maybe nice, especially with James Conner looking pretty solid.
I think you can rescind the tag as long as he hasn't signed it. So if he hasn't reported, he hasn't signed it. So I'm pretty sure you can rescind it whenever. The only thing though is that you're saving $14.5 million this year by rescinding the tag, but what are you going to use for? What are you going to use it for? I mean, who are you going to get that's worth that kind of money anyway? And in that sense, it would also again be disadvantageous for Bell because he might make more money in the long run by agreeing to a deal with the team. But you think about it, even if you talked about it before if the Steelers rescinded the tag earlier this offseason. If the Steelers did this now, he'd be screwed for this year. He'd make a good amount of money this year, but he wouldn't even make nearly as much as he'd be making now. Any teams that can afford him right now are not going to be good this year. So he would automatically lose out on a chance of winning a championship, and he might be locked into a choice for a team that he might not have originally wanted to go to, but only could afford to sign him this year because it's such a late time in the year when teams are already expecting to go with what they have. So I don't think the rescinding the tag is the right move for either side, but I think Bell would be really kind of screwed if this happens. But at the same time, I think the Steelers' best chance of winning a championship also comes with Bell on the field this year. So basically, long story short, Bell should just report to the Steelers on Labor Day or before the first game. That's kind of what I'm getting at. All right, more big news for the Steelers today. I guess this shouldn't be too surprising. We've talked about it at times this preseason. The Steelers are attempting to trade backup quarterback Josh Dobbs. Dobbs is set to start tomorrow night against the Panthers, but could quite easily be on his way out of town before he gets cut on Saturday. Let's talk about Dobbs and any potential return that he could get and who's a good suitor for him.
Well, I'd be happy in terms of returns go with a 7th-round pick or switching a 7th-round pick for a 6th, like the Steelers did with their 5th to get Ryan Switzer. My point is, if he does end up being traded, he isn't worth much. Trying to get a 7th for him is going to be already a tough sell, so I'll be really excited for anything, even if they, like I said, switch their 7th-round pick with a 6th-round pick. But in the most ideal situation, I think the best they could get is a conditional 6th-round pick, and it would have to be conditional to get that high. I don't think you're getting out of the 7th round for him unless it's conditional. Unfortunately, in terms of buyers, at this point, there really isn't that many. My number one, since the beginning of talking about trading Josh Dobbs, was Seattle. He was the first team that I thought of when I thought of trading Josh Dobbs, because I knew their backup quarterback situation was bad, and I know that they liked a mobile quarterback. And but they realized that too, the Seattle franchise. And as of today, they traded six-round pick for Packers quarterback Brett Hundley. So they don't need a backup quarterback anymore. They got a quarterback with starting that has starting games under his belt. But after that, I think the best option is really the AFC West, like the entire division. The backups in that division all need help. John Gruden came out and said he didn't know if a backup quarterback was on the roster like a week ago. So when the Ryan Switzer news broke, actually, I had high hopes Dobbs was a part of it, but obviously that isn't what happened. Then Phillip Rivers' backups are Cardell Jones and Geno Smith, and they did invest in Cardell Jones a little bit, so it's going to be it would be a tough sell to the Chargers, but neither of those guys really entertain me. They don't do anything for me, and I think Dobbs has more potential than both. Cardell Jones, I did not like coming out of college when he was drafted by the Bills. I think 2 years ago now. But then the Broncos as a whole are a mess. They may end up cutting Paxton Lynch, and that would leave Chad Kelly as the quarterback behind Case Keenum. Not exactly ideal. I think they would probably fare better with Joshua Dobbs. But then finally, I think the Chiefs are actually the best place, and the Chiefs have the same backup problem as the Broncos, essentially. And I know I called Dobbs like a budget Russell Wilson a bunch of times, but Dobbs and Mahomes are exactly alike. Both strong-arm quarterbacks that can move, and accuracy isn't their strength. So he'd actually really fit in as like an exact copy of Mahomes, especially for what I think Mahomes is going to be. I'm not excited for Mahomes. This is going to be a tangent, but I think Mahomes is going to be like consistently average. Like he's going to have really good games, and he's just going to have really bad games the way he plays. And they can get the same backup in Dobbs, in my opinion. But what do you think of this situation?
Well, you already know that I thought this was kind of impossible, and I didn't think it was likely to happen at all. But I suppose there's still a small chance that Dobbs could be traded before Saturday. I still think it's very unlikely, but if they were able to get anything from Dobbs, I would consider that a huge victory. For this year anyways, barring injury, we know Dobbs has no chance to make this team, and he'd only be a practice squad player at best. You already covered some of the teams, basically the AFC West, the Chargers, Chiefs, Broncos, the Raiders, another one. Another team I looked at was the Carolina Panthers. Didn't realize Derek Anderson's not there anymore. I believe it's Garrett Gilbert is their top backup right now. You have to think about it. Cam Newton takes a lot of hits, and he's been relatively healthy. But I think Dobbs is another player in similar physique, maybe not as big and strong, but you already covered it. He's mobile. He's got a big arm. That's kind of what Cam Newton is too. So he could be a Cam Newton light version out there, possibly. I don't know if he'd really be a factor there or not, but maybe they'd be interested in him because Gilbert doesn't really seem like a good backup to me, but I also haven't seen him play that much. You already talked about Paxton Lynch being released, potentially being released, or even keeping him and looking at Chad Kelly as the backup. They don't really have anyone that's established, and you'd have a legitimate case for calling Dobbs the second best quarterback on that team. So there are targets around. I'm not saying it's impossible anymore, but I still think it's very unlikely to happen. But in the event it does, if the Steelers get anything, that would be incredible. So keep your eyes on that, and remember, it's a quick turnaround. So once the final gun is shot on tomorrow night's game, just remember, you got a few days, and then we should know what's going on with Dobbs. But if he's not traded, he's going to be cut at the very least. We do know that for sure. Speaking of Dobbs, since he's going to be running the offense, what are we going to be looking for from the Pittsburgh Steelers on offense in this week?
Well, this is the last chance game for many players. What's going to be big to monitor is this is going to be Josh Dobbs' last audition tape for other teams for either trade bait for the Steelers or to add to his resume for when he gets cut. That's really going to be the biggest thing to watch during this game. If Josh Dobbs can put up one last performance where you could say the wide receivers didn't make him look good, which if he does do good, that should actually be the case because the about-to-be-cut guys are going to be playing like Tevin Jones, Trey Griffey, Quadri Henderson, and Damone Patterson. But then Dobbs could possibly be traded. But the best-case scenario, actually, in my opinion, is him probably tanking. He's practice squad eligible, and for all the crap I gave him for when he was drafted, I saw improvement in him this preseason. I think he'd be great to start on the practice squad. He would actually probably not deserve to be on the practice squad, and I'm sure before he gets there, a team would actually probably try and grab him. But it's not necessary with the three the Steelers have, but if one gets hurt, I wouldn't mind him being called up to the 53-man. I think that he showed enough improvement that he could be a quality number 3. Or even number 2, he might be able to outplay Mason Rudolph in his first year, if depending on who got hurt, actually. But other than that, we're really not going to see anything interesting, for at least in my opinion, from the offense, other than Jalen Samuels. I ruled Samuels out of making the roster since he was drafted, but after these past 2 games, it's becoming hard for me to put Fitz on the roster, especially with the addition of Ryan Switzer, who'll be doing returns now. Samuels may be the move. We will see in this game, but that brings me to the last interesting thing. I hope to see Switzer play a little bit on offense. Tomlin said the plan is to have him play at least a few snaps, so I'm excited for that. But really, that's the only thing I'm looking for in the offense in this game. I'm not particularly excited. I'm more excited about the defense. But what do you think about the offense going into this game?
Well, as will be the case with most of, if not all of the starters, Ben Roethlisberger is not going to play. Mike Tomlin wouldn't even commit to Landry Jones playing on in this one, and you mentioned Josh Dobbs is going to be starting. If that's the case, why would Jones play at all? So he's not going to play. So it's going to be the Dobbs and Rudolph show again, although this time, like it was in the second preseason game, just those 2 guys are going, except Dobbs will be taking the first half and Rudolph will probably be in the second half. With the Steelers actively trying to trade Dobbs, as we mentioned before, it'll be interesting to see how he performs, since he already knows that his future in Pittsburgh, at least for this year, is he doesn't have much time left. His only path to an active roster this year is through trade, so his best bet for himself is to play well and hope the Steelers can find a trade partner by Saturday. If not, you hope he gets cut because he knows he's going to be. He'll make it on the Steelers practice squad or get claimed by somebody else where he'll still have a chance to be an NFL player this year. For the Steelers, the ideal scenario is, like you said, hope that Dobbs doesn't perform too well, or if he gets, say, a minor rib injury, have to throw him on IR, so that way you don't expose him to other teams. That way, at the end of this season, whether or not Ben retires or whether or not Jones is retained or not, you could bring back Dobbs and have him have a legitimate chance to make the team next year. So that'll be interesting to watch, to see how Dobbs performs. And really, although his play will be cool to monitor, it's going to be more interesting to see what happens in the few days following, to see where he ends up. As far as Rudolph goes, don't expect a whole lot more than we've already seen from him, and that's fine. He's performing about as well as I expected him to, and he's again, they always say the biggest jump in a player is from year 1 to year 2, and that's fine. Rudolph is fine to sit back there and learn how to be an NFL quarterback this year. Let him worry about possibly being a backup next year. At the running back position, it's become an interesting talking point all of a sudden. Bell, Nix, and Connor are all locks to make the roster right now, but beyond that, you're talking about maybe up to as many as 3 players for one roster spot now. So you're talking about 3 different guys, the first being Jalen Samuels. This is the guy that really impressed last week. We already knew coming out of college that he played in the slot. He was a good receiver. He could run some plays to the outside well. He wasn't really a true running back, but he had good skills that makes good running backs great. We didn't expect him to show that he could run between the tackles, which he did impressively against the Titans on last Saturday. He ran hard and he ran well. So with all of that, he's given himself a chance to make the team. The only thing he hasn't really openly improved on is pass protection, which he still has time to improve on. So he definitely has a chance to make this team. Plus, he'll also play a little special teams. The second guy is Fitzgerald Toussaint, and he's been around. It just feels like he never goes away. He's a true fighter, a proven commodity, and he's the second best pass-protecting running back on the team right now. He's a 4-phase special teams player, and he knows the system best of the 3 backs fighting for the last spot or 2 here. I think Toussaint is going to make the team because he has the experience. He plays on all special teams. He plays well, and he can pass protect. And last is Stephen Ridley, who I originally had on this team. It is probably the best pure running back as far as running the ball of these 3 players. But that being said, I don't think he's making this team because he's had some pretty bad injuries that have caused him to miss most of the last few weeks. We just haven't seen enough from him yet to justify keeping him. He'll have one more chance this upcoming preseason game, but it's looking more and more like he'll be either edged out by Samuels or Toussaint, if not both. So it's going to be tough for him. But all 3 guys do have a claim to the roster, and this cut down will be tough. So just keep your eye on the running backs too. The wide receiver position is pretty much solved. We already know who the 5 or 6 are going to be. It's going to be AB, Juju, Washington, Switzer, and then a combination of DHB and Hunter, depending on how many receivers they keep, 5 or 6. Eli Rogers will be on IR or PUP. So the one thing to watch is Switzer as far as a receiver. Austin talked about him. You're going to see him probably returning punts and maybe kicks. You hope to see him a bit on offense, too. That'll be interesting. I want to see that, but I'm not so sure we're going to. So basically all that's left is a competition between guys like Marcus Tucker, Damone Patterson, and Trey Griffey as they try to earn a practice squad spot. The tight end position is going to be all reserves because Jesse James is the only healthy regular, and he can't get hurt again. The guys playing may have a chance to become the 2nd or 3rd tight end with the injuries like Hodges or Pharaoh McKeever, but we'll see. You really don't want to have to go with those guys if you don't have to. Finally, the offensive line is pretty much decided barring injuries. The Steelers have their 8 guys right now, and there's no reason to think that'll change this week. All right, so now that we're through the offense, we didn't really script anything or prepare anything, but is there an X factor for you on offense in this game?
X factor for me is definitely got to be Josh Dobbs. This is an easy one to pick right then and there. He's fighting for what his job is on the line in this game. Like for whatever team, he's got to put on a good audition tape for whatever team, or fail miserably. Maybe the Steelers literally talked to him and said, "Hey, if you want to stay here, just fail miserably, make yourself look bad." But I doubt they did that. I doubt that they would do that. But he's going to be an X factor in this game because it's going to determine what's happening with him if he gets traded, if he gets cut and then comes back on the practice squad, if he gets cut and picked up by another team. He's the X factor for me. Who's the X factor for you?
I was torn because I was thinking about right now the running back position because that's the one that has me most interested. But I'm not going to pick one of those guys. Instead, I'll go with Ryan Switzer just because we haven't seen any of him in a Steelers uniform yet, and I'll be interested to see what he can do. These X factors are more about who we want to see and what we feel we can learn the most from their performance, not about the typical X factor who can help them win. Because, again, if there's a meaningless preseason game, this is the most meaningless one. So, all right. We're going to do that on defense too, but let's talk a little bit about the defense. A lot more going on here, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, defense is a lot more interesting than offense. There's definitely some battles still happening and people fighting for roster spots. But first, before we talk about the people fighting for roster spots, we'll actually probably see T.J. Watt debut for the first time this season, which is obviously exciting since he's been injured since about the beginning of training camp. And it's going to be nice to see the sophomore starter kicking the rust off. He's only going to play for like a few snaps if he even gets time. He's not even guaranteed time in this one. They might just wait till the regular season to let him get in there. But after that, despite a strong camp in preseason, I do think Ola Adeni is still fighting for a roster spot. He hasn't really impressed me on special teams. And to be honest, sometimes being better at special teams is better than being good at your position when you're clearly a backup. And that's what's happening with Ola Adeni. He's actually seems like a really solid linebacker, but solid pass rusher. But he's got to be able to play special teams better because that's what he's going to be mostly doing if he's active. I'm not saying he's going to be cut, but he needs to try and fix up his missed tackles on defense and then perform on special teams as well, since if he's active, he's going to be playing special teams. Like, that's basically it. He's not a starter. Bud Dupree and Anthony Chickillo TJ Watt are the starters. But then a big deal that's sort of going under the radar is the defensive line battle going on. LT Walton has been with the team a little while now and has always been decent when he has played. But someone who's done sneakily good in both camp and preseason has been Levon Hooks. While I currently still have LT Walton making the roster, if Levon Hooks has another good game like he did last year, he may be able to beat LT Walton for a backup defensive lineman spot. It's going to be exciting. It's going to actually probably come down to this game, I think. If Levon Hooks can put up a big game, I think he's got LT Walton's roster spot. But after that, I'm excited to see what LJ Ford is going to do, as he may be one of the guys on the roster bubble as well. But he's such a key special teamer that I doubt it. Plus, I like his speed. But speaking of inside linebackers with speed, Matthew Thomas is just exciting to watch. He has his roster spot secured in my mind, but he's just fun to watch. So I'm going to be excited to see him playing for a lot of this game. But also watch out for Tyler Matakevich as well. He's gone from the starter at the beginning before training camp started to possibly being on the roster bubble. But similar to LJ Ford, I think he's a solid special teamer and will ultimately stay on the team at least for this season. But my final guy to watch in this game is Brian Allen. He developed too slowly, in my opinion. I really think he's going to have to show something in this game to make the roster. He was a fifth-round pick after all. The Steelers shouldn't hold on to him if he hasn't shown too much. He just doesn't look comfortable out there. He was drafted for his athletic ability. They knew that he was a developmental player, but after a year of developing, I think it's over for that experiment. I think it was a solid experiment to try with Brian Allen's athletic abilities, but he doesn't make the cut for me. But that wraps up defense for me. What do you have to say about the defense going into this game?
Well, there's some interesting under-the-radar battles going on. You already mentioned it, so I guess this isn't really too much of a secret, but Levon Hooks and LT Walton. We all thought that it was going to be Josh Frazier versus Daniel McCullers, and McCullers quickly shut the door on that one. But Walton's been disappointing, and Hooks has been impressive, including the sack last week against the Titans. Walton lost second-team snaps this year in camp, and when you consider the fact that Hooks' play is picked up, it doesn't mean that Walton's a guy that's in line to make this team, even though he had a career year for sacks in 2017. So that's what you want to look out for on the defensive line. On the linebackers, this is the most interesting to me of the entire team this week. It has more so to do with how many the Steelers are going to keep, because even though the linebacker position itself, outside and inside, is not top-heavy, if you will, especially inside, the depth is interesting, because let's start with inside. Or rather, let's start with the locks, I guess, the guys who I think are definitely going to make this team. You have the four starters, Vince Williams, TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, and John Bostic. Behind that, you have the top outside linebacker reserve, Anthony Chickillo, that's number 5, and I think Matthew Thomas is a lock to make this team number 6. The Steelers can keep probably anywhere between 8 and 10 linebackers in total. So you're talking about picking between 2 and 4 guys. So let's start with the inside linebackers. 2 guys that might make it, or could, or should make it, are Tyler Matakevich and LJ Fort. They're both special teams players, but they're both very different types of players. For Fort, he is the more athletic player, and he projects as a better overall defensive player, but he lacks the experience on the defensive end, and he's a good special teams player, but not as good as Matakevich. On the other end, Matakevich himself has more defensive experience, is a better special teams player. He's a Pro Bowl level special teamer, and the coaches really like him. So you've got an interesting kind of contrast in styles there, but both are good special teams players. So I don't know who the coaches are going to keep. I would think they would prefer to keep Matakevich if they had a choice. I would probably go the other way. As far as the outside goes, the starters are locked in, and Chicolo's the first guy off the bench on both sides. But the last position or two, if they keep 5, is up for grabs. If they only keep 4, the Steelers are going to have to decide between Ola Adeni and Keon Adams. Adams has more pedigree, and the Steelers invested a draft pick on him last year. Plus, he looks like he has a future as a pass rusher. However, Adeni looks to be even better as a pass rusher and more developed. Wearing the number 92 and having the same physique as James Harrison has helped Adeni stand out, but his play has done him favors as well. In an article I sent Austin on Bleacher Report, he's even named the most likely undrafted free agent to become a star in this league from this season's class. Cutting either guy would be tough, and I don't know who they'd get rid of from these positions, but it's going to be difficult. Keep an eye on the linebacker positions, both inside and outside. And don't forget about Farrington Huguenin, too. I know he's probably not making this team, but I like him, too. He had a sack last week as well. Defensive backfield is going to wrap this one up. Keep an eye on the battle between Cody Sensabaugh and Brian Allen. Sensabaugh has the advantage with more experience and better play this preseason, but Allen still has hope. He surprisingly made the roster last year and showed some promise. He still has a chance to make this team, but he has to do something in this game. He's running out of time. Otherwise, it could be practice squad at best for Brian Allen. At safety, it's a similar battle between Nat Burray, Marcus Allen, and Jordan Dangerfield for the last spot. Dangerfield has been around for a few years and is a solid special teams player, so he has a chance, but he wasn't great last week, and although he has been good on defense, or hasn't been good on defense, rather, Nat Burray has been pretty solid in special teams, and he was specifically signed for the purpose of playing on special teams. So you have to think there might be a little more emphasis on keeping him, as the Steelers rarely cut free agent acquisitions from the offseason that they were signed. Although, there is one exception to that rule, and it should be noted that it happened just last year, and that was running back Niall Davis, who was signed basically to be a return man, but he didn't even make the team. Finally, the last guy, Marcus Allen, he has an outside shot, but I don't think he's making it. He's missed time with injury and is a prime candidate for the practice squad this year. He has a very, very slim chance to make it. So if you had to pick an X factor on defense, who would it be and why?
My X factor is going to be Brian Allen. I think if Brian Allen shows something really amazing, like 2 interceptions in this game and a pass breakup and 4 tackles, I think it's going to be harder to cut him. But right now, he's fighting for his spot as well. So he's really got to show something. Who's your X factor?
Mine is going to be Ola Adeni, mostly because of what you talked about, because we've seen what he can do on defense, and that's good, but oftentimes reserve players need to be able to play special teams, and the 4 missed tackles he has this preseason, which leads the team, is a concerning trend. I want to be able to see more from Adeni on special teams, and as far as tackling goes, I think he has a future, maybe even as a starter in this league, and I don't want to have him cut or pass through waivers for the practice squad. So him making this team is the best option for that to not happen, but he's got to be able to play better for it to happen, I think. I still think he's going to, but it's not a lock like I was believing he was just a few days ago. Special teams is going to be a pretty short conversation, Austin. I'm not even sure if there's a whole lot to say. We already know the kicker and long snapper. The punting competition is wide open, though. Mike Tomlin openly stated this week that the Steelers have a competition on their hands going into the final week of the preseason. Jordan Berry, the incumbent, probably will hold the tiebreaker if him and Matt Weil perform the same. But I'd say that Weil has slightly outperformed Berry this season due to some poor punts from Berry. Would you agree with my assessment of the punting competition thus far?
I would agree, and it's really just because of Barry's inconsistency. If Barry just didn't hit those 30-yard field goals, if they were just got over 40, it would look so much better on his resume. But it's just because of that. Matt Wiles consistently got every time he punts, it's 45. If that's what it feels like to me. He hasn't punted much, but it's it's 45, 45, 49, 47, and he averages 48 every time. It's consistent. And that's sort of what you want. You don't want a 30 and a 50. At least I don't. I'd rather take the more consistency than the one big play and one smaller play. But I agree with you, yeah.
Should also be interesting to note that Weil was the place kicker and can also do kickoffs, as seen in the second preseason game, but that also took away from some punts as Barry has had more opportunities to punt this preseason. This will be probably the most interesting battle as far as starters go, since it's technically, I guess, a starting position since you're the only punter on the team. But thinking about a punter position being entertaining has me bored already. So with that in mind, let's move on to the NFL news that we've seen throughout the last few days. I guess this wasn't the biggest news of the day, but there was big news. New York Jets traded their backup quarterback Teddy Bridgewater to the New Orleans Saints for a third-round pick. Do you like the trade for both sides? Is there a clear-cut winner here?
Today was just a busy day for NFL news. We woke up and there was NFL news. At least I woke up and there was NFL news, and then just big things all day. But I think the Jets should have waited for a higher offer, personally. I think they could have gotten a second for Teddy. To show my bias a little bit, though, I love Teddy. I've loved Teddy since he was drafted. I thought he was going to be the best from that draft class. And then I think his biggest concern was him not being able to bounce back, as I loved Bridgewater when he was a Viking. You have to remember, if not for Blair Walsh, he would have had a playoff win under his belt, but Blair Walsh shanked the kick. He would have had a playoff win under his belt. But that's not the only thing, though. Teddy showed that that injury is not holding him back anymore. He's clearly still the same Teddy. It didn't affect him. It's not hurting him, at least in the preseason. The preseason was darting up. But I think where the Saints are going to be drafting, the Saints, one, getting a really solid backup and a great future quarterback by essentially giving a pick going to be 6 picks off the 4th round. I know that the Jets probably asked for it. The Jets probably asked for the Saints' second-round pick, and they probably just settled for the Saints' third. But I would have tried trading with another team at that point. I think the Saints' third is going to be way too high up in the draft for me to say, yeah, I'm going to part with Teddy for this. I mean, I think they should have met in the middle, and they should have traded with someone at the beginning of the third round, or that they projected was going to be at the beginning of the third round. It's hard to predict, but I don't know. I'm not a fan. What do you think?
I kind of like the move for both teams, although I do understand the points you are making. The Saints, it's interesting. They could be getting the quarterback of the future in Teddy Bridgewater for whenever Drew Brees hangs it up, which could be as soon as the end of this season. But you were the one that pointed out to me that the Saints are now not going to have, correct me if I'm wrong, a first-round pick or a third-round pick next year, right?
Nope, they traded up for Marcus Davenport, and then now they just traded the third for Teddy.
That's tough. But at the same time, if they suspect that Bridgewater is going to be their quarterback going forward whenever Brees is done, they probably don't still expect to be competing, at least for a little while. Because would you agree that Teddy Bridgewater is someone of the same or similar ilk as, I don't know, who's a couple of names that could be comparable? I guess maybe Alex Smith and Andy Dalton, somewhere around there in between there, based on last season?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Because while Teddy Bridgewater is considered, I guess, unproven as far as playing since these injuries, I'm right there with you. Bridgewater was a guy that I got to see a lot of, having been in the old Big East when he used to play against Pittsburgh back in the day. So I used to see him play back in the day, and I always thought he was a very good player. And even though he's not, he was considered to be kind of the Josh Rosen of this draft, where he was the NFL ready guy right away. He didn't have the highest upside. I just think he's a pro through in and throughout, and I think The Saints getting him is a huge win for them, and the Jets were able to add another relatively early pick to help them continue with their rebuild. The Jets' rebuild, speaking of which, is centered around Sam Darnold, their top pick this year. With the Bridgewater trade being announced, it was also announced that Darnold is going to start the season opener right out of the gate, and Josh McCown will back him up. At 21 years old and 97 days old, Darnold will be the youngest quarterback to start a season opener in the NFL since the 1970 merger. I get it's probably what the Jets fans want, but would you have started him, or would you have started McCown at least for a few games?
See, from the past, I've not been a fan of starting rookie quarterbacks out the gate. I think it ruined Deshaun Kaiser. I mean, that's a different situation. That's a whole other can of beans with that coaching and the whole situation of being Cleveland Brown. But I just feel like it doesn't usually work out. I feel like it hurts them. Another one that comes to mind is Paxton Lynch. Paxton Lynch wasn't just thrown in there, but I don't like what the coaching staff. What I'm trying to get across is that I don't like the Jets coaching staff. I feel like they're going to be changing soon. And one of the things that happened wrong with Paxton Lynch, he didn't get thrown in there right away, but the coaching staff was a revolving door, and I think it messed up Paxton Lynch. And then with Deshaun Kaiser, obviously the Browns are always revolving, but he just got thrown in right into a dumpster fire. And, I feel like, the Jets aren't a dumpster fire, and I feel like it's a combination of that. I feel like they should have waited. I get that they're trying to compete, and I think Sam Darnold is the move. Josh McCown isn't good, just to put it that way, but I feel like Darnold could have done with some more development. But we'll see. I do think Darnold is going to be good. I don't like the idea of throwing a rookie right out there, right, to get eaten up right at the beginning. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird because I guess what I would, if I were in their position, I'd start McCown for at least the first month and then reevaluate from there. But what difference is 4 games going to make? It's not going to make much, right?
No, it's not really.
I don't know. It's the tough thing is, like you said, because of coaching, because of talent around the quarterback, it's tough to tell, and obviously each quarterback is different. It's tough to tell what is the right call to make in each scenario. I think Darnold is going to be a good player, but it just makes me nervous if I were a Jets fan throwing him right into the fire like that, just because they haven't been a good team for a few years. Whereas with the Browns, Kaiser got thrown in there and didn't have any success, and again, that's also a different situation. I don't know. I would have started McCown for a little bit, but the other thing you have to consider is as soon as he throws an interception, they're going to be screaming to bring in Darnold too. So I would have waited, but I understand why they chose not to anyways. It'll promote some excitement within the organization too. Some other excitement further north comes from that of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Aaron Rodgers, widely considered to be the best quarterback in football, just became the richest man in football. He signed a 4-year, $134 million extension, over $100 million in guaranteed money throughout the life of the contract, and a signing bonus worth $57 million alone, and he'll make $80 million by March next year. Wow, what a deal. What are your thoughts on the extension?
Well, he definitely deserved it. Even coming back from injury, he's going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time when it's all said and done. Definitely top 10 and probably top 5, to be honest with you. I would have to actually make that list to be sure of that, but he's definitely top 10. He deserves that massive stack. That's basically all I have to say. What do you have to say about it?
I mean, we all knew this was coming. Rodgers had been considered one of, if not the best quarterback in the league for over 5 years now, and he's certainly deserving of being the highest paid player in the league. I still find it interesting that he didn't get a fully guaranteed contract like Kirk Cousins got earlier this year for less amount of years, because I kind of figured that's what he would have been trying to aim for, but the fully guaranteed contract will wait another year. As far as Rodgers goes, remember, he was drafted the year after Ben Roethlisberger, so he's been in the league a long time. He didn't first start games, though, until 2008 when Brett Favre left the Packers. Since that year, though, listen to this, Austin. I'll name off the seasons in which he's played 15 games or more, because in 2013 and last year he played only 9 and 7 games respectively. Listen to how many touchdowns he's thrown in those seasons, starting from 2008 and going up to 2016. 28, 30, 28, 45, 39, 38, 31, and 40. And keep in mind, Ben Roethlisberger is going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. He's had more than 28 touchdown passes, I believe just twice in his NFL career. So Rodgers has done that. He's thrown 313 career touchdowns, only 78 interceptions. That's the best TD to interception ratio in NFL history of anyone who's thrown over 2,000 passes. He's almost thrown 5,000 passes. He'll have thrown 5,000 passes probably before we're halfway through the season. And he's done all that, and he's only 34. He's very deserving, obviously, of this contract, I believe. So Aaron Rodgers, a happy man, and I'm sure all of Green Bay is as well. The Packers, that wasn't the only quarterback that made news headlines today. You already mentioned it. Backup quarterback Brett Hundley from last season started 9 games. Traded to the Seattle Seahawks, meaning that Deshaun Kaiser won the backup quarterback job there. Hundley, who ran for a score against the Steelers just 2 weeks ago, now Russell Wilson's backup. The Packers getting a 6th-round draft pick in exchange. What are your thoughts on that move?
I like this trade for both. Packers didn't need 2 solid backups, and Kaiser is younger and can actually have a chance to be better as a starter when Rodgers retires. He's sitting with a competent coaching staff now that won't throw him into a dumpster fire, as I mentioned earlier. I think Kaiser, sitting behind Rodgers with a coaching staff that's not going to be changing around and is actually competent, could develop better. Because Kaiser, I believe, was a 4th-round pick when he was drafted, or a 3rd round.
Second.
Oh, I'm stupid. He was a 2nd round. I don't know why in my head he was later, but he was not a 1st-round draft talent, and the Browns just threw him in there anyway. And like I said, I like letting first-rounders sit for longer, and Kaiser was not ready. And I think that Kaiser performed poorly, and sure, I think he might actually be not that good, but I think that sitting with the Packers, he has the best chance to reach his max potential, which could be good. And he could replace Rodgers when all is said and done. Depends. We'll see. Maybe probably not, but it's possible. Then for the Seahawks, they get a backup with starting experience that's cheap, and they didn't have to pay the Packers too much, so win-win. What do you think of the trade?
I like this trade for both sides. Hundley wasn't great in 9 starts last season, but he's talented and experienced enough now to be a solid backup to a guy like Russell Wilson. Similar body type and similar physique and play style. A mobile guy like Wilson, I think he'll fit in there nicely. On the other end, the Packers brought in Kaiser to push Hundley, and Kaiser showed that he was, in fact, a better player. That trade worked out well for the Packers, and they were able to get a 6th-round pick out of it while still retaining a good backup quarterback. So a good move for the Packers. That's a nice thing they can look back on and say, you know what, we upgraded the quarterback position without having to give up too much. And then we got something for it, too. We're going to jump right to another bit of Seahawks news. Number 2 wide receiver Tyler Lockett signed to a 3-year deal. Currently, the number 2 receiver behind Doug Baldwin, who's nursing an injury. Do you like Tyler Lockett at all?
No, I hate this deal. I read it, and I was like, why is he being paid so much money? Tyler Lockett has been overrated since he's been drafted. I don't understand. The wide receiver market is so beyond broken right now that, just anyone could just go out there and catch a ball and they get, $8 million a year. It is insane. The wide receiver market needs to crash, immediately, because this is ridiculous for what they're getting paid.
Let me tell you, it's only going to get worse. Because with teams throwing the ball more and all the spread offenses, teams are only going to pay receivers more.
It's just so bad, dude. These wide receiver 2s are getting wide receiver 1 money, and they're not even good wide receiver 2s. I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. I think Antonio Brown, OBJ, DeAndre Hopkins, and Julio all deserve the contracts that they have. They have huge contracts. I actually don't think DeAndre does because of when his deal was made, but I think that they all deserve it. But guys like Sammy Watkins that has a deal that's almost better than OBJs when you look at it, that's ridiculous. I hate that the wide receiver market is broken. And I think this is like a tangent, but I think it's the reason why like Bell wants so much, because the wide receivers are broken. And like you look at running back and it's like, yeah, a good running back gets $8 million. That's like wide receiver 2 money. That sucks.
All right, well, off of that, this is probably the most interesting news of the day, probably the most interesting arrest of the season, or legality of the season. Super Bowl champion linebacker Michael Kendricks, now, or actually formerly of the Eagles and now formerly of the Browns, has been charged with the count of conspiracy to commit securities fraud, basically insider trading. Kendricks reportedly profited over $1 million by using illegal non-public information to make investments in 2014 and 15. If convicted, Kendricks could face a penalty of up to 25 years in jail, 3 years of supervision after his release, a $5 million fine, and he'd have to forfeit the money which he profited from in the trading in the first place. And he plans on pleading guilty. Kendricks has since been released by the Browns, so wow. I don't know if you had a chance to really look into this much, but it's kind of a little much for me as far as the specifics go and the legality of it. But all I can say is just wow. I really don't know what to say about that. I even went back through the NFLarrest.com has a database of every arrest that an NFL player has been involved in since 2000, and this has got to be the first time, from what I saw, that any player has been arrested for insider trading.
It's just crazy, man. It's just really crazy. I mean, like, you're already a multi-million-dollar athlete. I understand trying to get your money up, but, like, why would you do something so risky? Like, why would you do something that could literally land? I mean, the 25 years in jail is ridiculous on the guilty part. Like, even if he gets convicted guilty, which he's pleading guilty, as you said. But, like, I don't know, man. Like, just buy yourself, pay an investor. Like, you're a multi-million-dollar athlete. Pay an investor to do it for you. Like, they're not that expensive. I have an investor. Me and John were talking about this right before we started podcasting. It's like that if NFL trouble happens with the Steelers, we could talk to the people we know for this. So I know an investor isn't beyond expensive. I know a multi-million-dollar athlete could afford it if I can afford it. It's just stupid. Stupid, and I think the amount of time that he's going to get is ridiculous for what it is anyway. But what do you think? You have anything to add?
Yeah, I need to learn more about what exactly insider trading is itself, and I need to know why it's such a steep penalty. And I get it should be a penalty, but I don't understand why 25 years is such a long time. First of all, you're right, Michael Kendrick, this is so stupid. Why would any professional athlete who's making, at the very least, even a guy in the practice squad, how much money are practice squad players making? I think
they make like $300,000 a year.
300. Let's say that's what it is. That's a nice paycheck you're getting every week. Why would you not want that? And, like, I get that, but like you said, you can afford one. You know, you're a college student, you work and go to school, and you can afford it. So if you can afford a financial advisor, why can't Michael Kendricks? Why does he have to do something like this? This was just a terrible mistake. And the last thing I'll say is I think it's completely egregious. And again, I don't know everything about insider trading, but I find it hard to believe that Kendricks should get 25 years when someone like Greg Hardy, who physically abused his girlfriend, bloodied her, beat her, bruises all over her body, nearly strangled her to death, he only got 18 months in jail for that. And I find that really disturbing, and that's a real problem, and that's completely inexcusable that Kendricks could get 25 years as opposed to under 2 years for something that I find to be far more egregious. But again, I don't know enough about insider trading to make an entire judgment on it, but if it is what I seem to understand it is, I really don't get that. So that's all I really have left to say about that. And just overall a very weird instance, which I wasn't expecting to see, and I guess I was even more surprised to see just how long of a sentence he is facing, and if that is in fact what he'll get. So we'll keep you in touch on that. And then as far as if the Steelers players or coaches ever get into more legal trouble and we need help discerning that, like Austin said, we know some people that will try to get on the show to help explain it a little better. Always nice to have guests that can help explain an end that we don't know necessarily very well, since we're all about Steelers, I guess. But I guess that concludes our long preseason Week 4 episode. I bet we didn't really expect that this would go almost an hour, since there wasn't a whole lot to talk about as far as the game goes. But then again, when there's talks about insider trading in the NFL, that's something to talk about, and there was definitely a good bit of news to get to today. So we're almost there, ladies and gentlemen. We are almost there. Just got to get through tomorrow. That'll be the end of the preseason, and then a week from then is going to be Eagles and Falcons in the first game of the year. College football, if you're into that, some games started last week already, and the big games, the first big games of the year, are this Saturday. So we finally made it. We finally made it through the summer. We made it through the football offseason. We're ready to go, and just one more preseason game to get out of the way. We finally did it, ladies and gentlemen. Time to celebrate.
Yay, football's on its way back, like real football. That's not preseason activity. Yay.
Oh, one last thing I wanted to talk to you about. Did you see what Jerry Jones said about the 18-game schedule and getting rid of 2 preseason games?
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
Jerry Jones, the Cowboys owner, lobbied for 18 regular season games and 2 preseason games.
That'd be so rough to cut down rosters, though, and then it's such a long season. I really want it. Personally, if ideally for watching, I'd want 4 preseason games so the team can determine who they want, and then 18 regular season games. So that's not plausible with the taxing that football does on your body as a player. Like, the players would be exhausted. You really, I don't know how you would make it through the season without, like, a good amount of injuries, you know what I'm saying? So I don't think the 18-game regular season and then 2 preseason games is a good idea, only because it makes it hard to determine who to cut and who to keep. Like, you don't really get those undrafted free agents because you can't really take a chance on them because you don't know if they could keep it up. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I don't want to see an 18-game regular season. I think 16 is fine. I think it's a good amount of games, and I don't want them to cut down to 2. But I do have an idea, and I'll pitch this to you, and let me just say right now this is not going to happen because it would involve getting rid of a week of games in the preseason. And I guess technically a week of games and another game. That would not fly because owners would be losing ticket sales. And I get it. That's one reason it's not going to happen. And the other is because it would kind of get rid of the Hall of Fame game weekend. So, Austin, I'll pitch it to you now. A 3-week preseason that does not include the Hall of Fame week beforehand. The Hall of Fame game, the Hall of Fame weekend, if you will, or the Hall of Fame celebration, is kind of like what the season opener of the regular season is. It's played a few days before the other games. It's a few days where they get to celebrate the Hall of Fame induction as normally. But instead of it being a separate week of preseason games where it's just 2 teams played the extra game, they instead play the Hall of Fame game to kick off the preseason. And then there's 3 weeks of preseason games followed by 16 regular season games. That way, the first game, because I feel like the first and second game of the preseason are typically played pretty similar, where some starters are going to play but not a lot are. The third game is typically the tune-up game, and the fourth game is the meaningless game. The fourth game is going to be the quote-unquote meaningless game, even if it's the third game, because it's... Look, no important starters are going to play in those games anyways. The first and second game, though, I feel like you can kind of merge into one. And I guess my one counterpoint to the whole Hall of Fame game being the kickoff of the preseason week 1 instead of just having it its own week would be to have it as its own week, but then have those two teams on a bye week for the first week of the preseason, have them play the second preseason game 2 weeks later. So what are your thoughts about that? Did I explain it well enough?
Yeah, I got you. It would be like the Hall of Fame game is the same week as the first week of preseason, but it would just be a few days earlier, essentially, and it would just lose one of the games. See, I don't know. I just love football. I understand for the most fans. I know that they want less preseason. I actually just want more football. So I'm not a fan of actually even cutting down preseason. But I mean, I feel like that would actually be a really good option since we discussed it. The fourth game is essentially meaningless. So like, why would you just not get rid of that one game that's meaningless and instead of dragging out the preseason, maybe just moving that Hall of Fame game in so that it's not like 5 weeks until football actually starts. I think that would be a good move.
Yeah, I still don't see it happening, but I feel like it's almost the best of both worlds where casual fans who are sick and tired of the preseason, they get it ended 1 week earlier, and if you have the Hall of Fame game pushed into the first week as well, you've got 2 weeks less of a stretch, so it seems like it's shorter when it's not really that much shorter, but it still is. And you still have 3 games to evaluate players. It's not as much, but it's still at least enough. I feel like 2 games would not be enough. That's just my personal opinion. And then, yeah, no, I think that would make the most sense. Did you know, back in the 70s, the teams used to play 6 preseason games?
6, you said?
Yep.
To 6, you said?
Yep, that is correct.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Did I lose you? Are you still here?
I'm assuming you can't hear me, can you? All right, Austin hung up. I guess he could not hear me, so we're going to try to reestablish that call here in a minute. But yeah, I did say 6 games. 6 games, 6 preseason games. That seems excessive, but I guess you think about it back in the day. I don't know if you guys know this, but Rocky Blyer was a 16th round draft pick back in the day. I mean, they used to have a good amount of players on their team back then too. So it's not like all those players that were drafted just got thrown out the window when you have all those rounds. Anyways, Austin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right, for whatever reason, I guess I cut out on you. But yeah, I did say 6 preseason games.
That's insane. That must have been miserable in the 70s.
And to make it even better, the starters played a lot more then, so they played a long, long time. But
that as a fan, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, it must have been pretty rough. But at the same time, you could only watch a few games per. I think the reason might have been also because you only had like 3 channels back in the day. You could only see so many teams. So maybe that would help each team get a little more exposure in the preseason. But anyways, we'll get back to, I guess, this episode. We've gone pretty much everywhere, including the preview of this final game. I'm not going to be able to watch this game, at least most of it, and I don't think Austin's going to be able to either. So we might have a quick recap episode, but we're not sure if even watching the game from start to finish, certainly not twice, is even worth it. So we'll keep you up to date. And don't forget about the Fantasy Football League. Again, it's STS Football 2018 on NFL.com. I might not have said that before. So NFL.com Fantasy, STS Football 2018. Password is Super Bowl with the letters S and B capitalized. So that wraps it up for the show. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com and check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us again tonight, and have a terrific day. Enjoy the Steelers' final preseason game, and know that once that game is over, we'll have finally made it. Keep an eye out as well for the roster cutdowns. Those will be done on Saturday. The best time of the year is finally upon us. Football season is at hand, and we're both thankful for it. So, as always, thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Have a great night.
Have a good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.